This is a closed-circuit announcement on CDAT Channel 20, the ParaNet UFO Continuum. 30 seconds to program. "20 seconds to program. "10 seconds.
Stay tuned for one of the most unusual and fascinating hours you'll ever hear. The subject is UFOs. Welcome to the ParaNet UFO Continuum, a one-hour program dedicated to a very strange phenomena, unidentified flying objects. Whether or not you believe UFOs exist, the controversy is real, and this program will try to get to the bottom of it. Your host is Michael Corbin, Director of ParaNet Information Services, a global communications network based near Denver, Colorado, dedicated to the investigation of UFOs. We invite you to keep an open mind as we discuss one of the most fascinating and strange subjects in the world. Here's your host, Michael Corbin.
What do we really know about the movers and the shakers of ufology? Consider, most of the information that we get about what's really behind the UFO enigma comes to us from a very select few. Bud Hopkins, John Mack, groups like MUFON, the Mutual UFO Network, the Center for UFO Studies, and others are just among the major sources of information that you read and hear on this subject. But how do we really know this information is reliable? Well, we really don't unless we investigate our sources, who they are, where the money comes from. Well, tonight my guest has investigated one such group. His investigation will be detailed during this hour. What he has found will surprise you. So we're going to talk a little bit about that tonight. And before we move on, we've got a full plate as usual. We're going to get down to the San Luis Valley in Colorado and find out what's going on down there. I understand that there's been a new spectacular multi-witness sighting that Chris O'Brien is going to update us on. And by the way, Chris will be our guest next week for the full hour, and he's going to bring us up to date on all of the things that are going on down in the San Luis Valley, which is, it contains all features of the UFO phenomena. You probably I finally watched this week the Roswell movie, the movie that's been airing on Showtime, and I know it's probably quite late for me to do this, but overall, my opinion on this movie was I thought it was well done as far as the acting and you know, the screenplay and the whole thing. I was very disappointed though in the Martin Sheen character, and the reason I was because over the years that I've been investigating UFOs, I've had some involvement with Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt, and I know that the work that they've done has been pretty good. I thought that the movie did a terrible disservice to the quality of that investigation, simply from the standpoint of where Martin Sheen's character comes into it. It seems like you know, we have this body of research that's been manifested in this movie, and it's on a good track, and then all of a sudden Martin Sheen comes in and we start hearing these wild theories that I have been very critical about over the years that have originated with people in the UFO circle, such as Bill Cooper, who you know, has wild stories that just can't be verified. John Lear and some of these other people, other luminaries in the field, have been talking about the way that the aliens have disrupted or had some kind of an influence on our religion, and you know, all these different stories, underground bases, etc. I was very disappointed in that, and it was difficult for someone who doesn't have a real extensive knowledge of the subject. It was hard for them to determine where the good research that Kevin Randall and Don Schmidt did, where it left off, and where this other stuff went off into the wild blue yonder. So anyway, that's my opinion, for what it's worth. Okay, now we're going to go to San Luis Valley, Colorado, southern Colorado area, where there has been an extensive amount of activity, mysterious cattle deaths, UFO sightings. There's even been reports of Bigfoot down there. And bringing us up to date will be Chris O'Brien. Good evening, Chris.
Hey, Michael.
How you doing?
Real good.
I understand before we went on the air we were talking about the spectacular sighting down there. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah. Last Sunday at about midnight, a group of what turns out to be 20 people total. I'm not sure how they were broken into groups. It might have been 2 or 3 different groups that witnessed the same thing, but the majority of the people were accompanied or were joined by a deputy sheriff from Rio Grande County, and basically what they saw was a formation of 12 objects in the sky that seemed to be hovering in formation over the Greeny Mountain area where our almost now famous NORAD event happened in January. And according to these witnesses, 2 of the 12 objects peeled off from the main group and descended through the clouds, below the clouds, and one of the objects came fairly close to a large group of the witnesses. They described it as being, I've heard this description now about 13 or 14 times in the last 2 years, a large silver sphere that had blinking red and blue lights underneath going around in a circular sequencing pattern. It was near enough for them to see that the object was silver-colored because the lights were evidently lighting up the underneath side of the object, and everybody was understandably riveted by the experience. Evidently, one member of the group happened to look up at the formation and saw that the group of 10 lights had formed into a letter in the sky, slowly started drifting west, formed into a triangle, and then drifted off to the west, west-southwest, which would be towards the Dulce base, alleged Dulce base area, or Archuleta Mesa area.
Down in New Mexico.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
What makes this particular sighting interesting is obviously the number of witnesses that observed it, and the fact, of course, that law enforcement was there, and you consider a deputy in a sheriff's office to be a fairly trained observer.
Sure, multiple witness cases are always the best.
Well, there you go. In addition to that, we've had 5 new cattle death cases in northern New Mexico in the Chuchas and Eagle's Nest area.
Now, is this, Chris, let me clarify. We read a news clip a couple of weeks ago about the New Mexico cattle deaths. 5 more in addition to the already mentioned in the paper?
I think it would, that would be 4 in addition to the information in that article. Eli Hornick, the rancher who has been plagued with these since September of last year, has now lost a total of 13 animals. The 3 additional cases all belong to a single rancher in the Chuchas, New Mexico area. I think that happened on the 18th, and isn't it funny? I know a lot of researchers and investigators out there occasionally stumble on this kind of information, but I had just made my first trip to Chuchas the day before, on my way back from Santa Fe, and then I find out that night they had 3 cattle death cases, and I try not to take this stuff personally and start looking over my shoulder, but man, I'll tell you, the more you get into this stuff, the more you realize that there's some really interesting aspects to this. That
you're talking about like synchronicities, maybe.
Yeah, the synchronicity of it. Where does the experiment end and the observer, start affecting the results of what he's observing?
That's a really.
I don't know. It's just at every turn there's a new surprise or a new enigmatic pattern or synchronicity to ponder, and I'll tell you, it's fast and furious down here.
Okay. In about 30 seconds, tell us what we're going to be in for as far as information next week on the program.
Well, I'd like to just basically give your listeners an overview of the activity in the area that we've been experiencing since our most recent, period of November '92 till now. Give them a brief overview of that, and also go into a little bit about the NORAD event in January 12th, 1994. And a precursor type event that happened exactly 11 years before in Gallup, New Mexico. The parallels between the 2 events are absolutely striking.
Okay.
And and I think we can go into that and kick that around a little bit as well.
Sounds very exciting, Chris.
Okay, well, good luck with your program.
Thank you, and as always, thanks for joining us and keeping us up to date on what's going on down there.
Very good, and I'm looking forward to speaking to you and your listeners next week.
Okay, great, thanks.
Talk to you then.
Okay, now, when we come back from break, we're going to introduce our guest this evening. We're going to talk about a group that he's investigated, and some of the information that he's got will surprise you. So stay tuned, and when we return, we'll get on with it. And I'm Michael Corbin, and this is the ParaNet UFO Continuum. We'll be right back.
The ParaNet UFO Continuum is pleased to offer a number of exciting products. Cassette tapes of previous shows are available for $8 each, or 2 for $12, or 4 for $20. You can also order ParaNet memberships, subscriptions to Continuum, ParaNet's quarterly newsletter, and there's the UT1 UFO Tracker Kit, containing everything you need when you come across something unusual in the sky. ParaNet, along with MICAP, the Multinational Investigations Cooperative on Aerial Phenomena, is pleased to offer a stunning black T-shirt with a background of galaxies, stars, and comets, and the ParaNet and MICAP logos, along with a beautiful blue-green planet Earth. When you order from ParaNet, you're helping to keep this program on the air. Call now to place an order or for more information at 1-800-UFO-NET1. That's 1-800-UFO-6381. ParaNet, your window on the universe, at 1-800-UFO-6381.
Good morning, Ted.
Morning, Larry. Good weekend.
Oh, very nice. I went to a little party for Smokey Bear.
No kidding.
Yeah, he's turning 50 this year.
Son of a gun, the big 5-0.
Yeah, nice party, too. The wives made a big cake, 50 candles.
Whose house?
Well, actually, we all put on party hats, ran out into the woods, and hid behind some trees, Ted.
Don't tell me. Smokey walks by, everybody jumps out and yells, surprise!
Oh, you could have knocked him over with a feather.
I'll bet. Tell me, Larry, what kind of gift do you get a 50-year-old bear who teaches people how to prevent forest fires?
Fuzzy slippers.
Of course. Sounds very nice.
Yeah, well, almost perfect. When we brought out the cake and sang Happy Birthday, Smokey made a wish and blew out all the candles.
Yeah, so?
Well, then he poured water on them.
Oh?
Yeah, and then he stirred them with a stick, and then he buried them. Well, hey, you know how it is, Ted. Some guys, they just can't leave work at the office.
Celebrate Smokey's 50th birthday, and remember, only you can prevent forest fires. This message brought to you by the USDA Forest Service, your state forester, and the Advertising Council.
You're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum. Whether or not you believe in UFOs, there's a lot about the subject you haven't heard. Stay tuned. Keep an open mind. Call in and join the discussion. Once again, here's your host, Michael Corbin.
I'm kind of reminded of something that happened years ago at the Watergate scandal when Deep Throat was talking to, it was either Woodward or Berenstein, about follow the money. You always find what you need when you follow the money. And I guess that is going to be kind of the theme of this show tonight. Before I introduce our guest, I want to read something that came out of the latest issue of UFO Magazine, Volume 9, Number 5. It's a little news blurb titled Research Donation. Fund for UFO Research, Center for UFO Studies, and MUFON will jointly receive generous funding from Las Vegas businessman Robert Bigelow to pursue research projects. Quote, "The dollar figure would blow your mind," said one researcher who has already received contributions from Bigelow. A known benefactor in the UFO field, Bigelow has previously contributed to Bud Hopkins, Intruders Foundation, and to Art Bell's radio show out of Las Vegas, among other beneficiaries. When contacted, Bigelow declined to comment. The reason I read that is because it does have some bearing on this. And first, I want to disclaim this by saying that I am in no way trying to throw any kind of water on legitimate research. But the thing that concerns me about this is a sum of money that will choke a horse, essentially, and it's going to all three of the major research groups. I kind of question whether or not that's a good thing, and whether or not that will stifle any competition or stifle research in a sort of a way, because of the fact that you've got all these different things going, and now everybody's working for one common thing. And I also am concerned about whether or not this damages the flow of information. So that's just something to keep in mind. My guest tonight is the senior editor of Outside Magazine. His name is Alex Hurd. He recently went on an excursion with the CSETI group, Dr. Stephen Greer's group, better known as the Center for the Study of Extraterrestrial Intelligence. And essentially, he went on an outing with them, and what he discovered in his investigation afterwards has been detailed in their latest Outside Magazine issue, September 1994. Good evening, Alex.
Hi.
Alex, tell us about the initial contact and detail for us what happened when you went on this field trip.
Okay, first of all, just to be accurate, it wasn't really recently. It was a year ago in May, so I guess May 92. And I spent a long time after that doing research just to write the article that you just mentioned. I had heard of Greer, but I just talked to a lot of people who keep track of these kind of subjects. And I first heard of Greer about 3 years ago from someone who had heard about the first Gulf Breeze episode. And I don't know if you've explained anything about that, but that was an early CSETI working group that went out to Gulf Breeze, which is a well known as a UFO sighting spot, and they did what they do, the drills that are described in the article, one night, and claimed some astounding contacts, and it started traveling around on the grapevine. So that interested me, because what was supposed to be different about it was the whole idea of going out there and doing things that take it out of the passive sort of UFO skywatch, where you're trying to take action, send signals, and send mental signals that actively solicit contact with extraterrestrial craft.
Now, first of all, I know I have a little bit of background myself with CSETI. Not any direct involvement or any kind of direct knowledge, but I do know that they have presented themselves to the public as more of a scientifically oriented group. And one thing I've always been kind of taken a dim view of is the idea that they utilize an acronym that very closely associates with legitimate scientific study, the SETI project, SETI. And, I myself have not been able to ascertain how some of the methodologies that they use, how they can be even construed as scientific.
Well, I mean, just from the way I think they would tell it, and this being Dr. Stephen Greer, who's I don't know, did you give any background on the group before we started talking?
No.
Okay. He's an MD in North Carolina who also has an interest in paranormal topics, especially UFOs, but not limited to that. And I think they would say, he would say, I've tried to set up a method that is a scientific approach to these subjects. And one of the people he mentions a lot in literature and lectures is J. Allen Hynek, who was a legitimate scientist and astronomer who investigated UFOs, correct me if I'm wrong, I think it was for Project Blue Book.
Right. He was a contract scientist to the project for many years, and basically at that time during that stint, he basically explained away as many of the sightings as he could, but then ultimately left the Air Force and went on his own and admitted that there was something going on in the UFO phenomena and founded the J. Allen Hynek Center for UFO Studies in Illinois.
Right, and he laid out the close encounters terminology that most people are familiar with, at least.
CE1 through CE4, close encounter.
He stopped at 3.
3.
And 3 is a contact with an extraterrestrial. And during the 80s, people started using the term CE4 to denote an abduction.
Right.
But I think that you don't really need that extra term. But that's really none of my business. Greer and CSETI, they don't say we're Latter-day Sons of Dr. Hynek. I mean, they don't pretend that, but he drops his name a lot as part of during his lectures. There's a lot of material just to give you the comfortable feeling that you're dealing with an empirical scientist, and the fact that he is an MD. And when I started working on this, I ran into rumors that he wasn't one, but it's just not true. He is a practicing physician.
He is actually an MD.
Yeah, I called his hospital and the state medical board in North Carolina. Everything's in order. And I think there was a 48 Hours segment on CBS, and they showed him at the start of it at work in his emergency room. Anyway, he uses that to give people the idea that this is the strictest kind of scientific approach, and whether it is or not is up to the consumer. But an MD is not automatically a scientist.
No.
They're trained people, but that doesn't mean that they will pursue anything with what a PhD like Hynek would consider the scientific method.
Right.
From what I observed, I didn't think it was very scientific. I thought it combined...
Alex, let me interrupt you there. We're going to go to break. When we come back, we want to get down to that, what you did observe, and how it maybe had the appearance of a scientific inquiry but did not. 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. My guest is Alex Hurd, senior editor of Outside Magazine. We'll be back in just a moment. I'm Michael Corbin, and you're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum.
Get the latest UFO news delivered right to your door with Continuum, the official quarterly publication of ParaNet Information Services. Continuum offers a serious look at the world of ufology through hard news reports and interesting and provocative interviews with leading ufologists and investigators. There's a source and resource section to help you locate information on UFOs, plus much, much more. Each issue is also packed with information from the ParaNet Information Services International Communications Network. So be informed with this comprehensive publication. Subscribe now and receive 5 issues for the price of 4. Send check or money order for $18 to Continuum, Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. That's Continuum, Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. Do it now.
Grab a pen and get ready to copy down a computer address. It's an email address where you can reach the ParaNet Information Services BBS through America Online. With America Online's Internet Gateway, you can send us mail and we can respond to you personally through your America Online screen name. With America Online's Usenet Newsgroup tie-in, you can also access the 7 ParaNet newsgroups dealing with UFOs, metaphysics, paranormal activity, and others. Learn about our upcoming shows and pose questions in advance. And if your question is selected, you'll get a free cassette copy of the show. You'll also find summaries of past shows. If you're not already a customer of America Online, call 1-800 827-6364 for more information. Now, here's that email address to reach us. It's paranet@aol.com or paranet@paranet.org. America Online and ParaNet, a winning combination.
Are UFOs for real, or are they just fiction? To find out, stay with us for more of the ParaNet UFO Continuum with your host, Michael Corbin.
I'm reminded of some of these other people in the field that have been classified as charlatans over the years. George Adamski, there's a whole bunch of them. Adamski, Williamson, just a whole bunch that came up with really wild ideas and wild things, and they just didn't hold up to scrutiny. My guest tonight is Alex Hurd, senior editor of Outside Magazine. And by the way, Alex is in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and the magazine is not a UFO magazine. Outside Magazine is a very impressive mainstream publication. And, Alex, tell us how you got involved with Greer to start with.
Well, why we were writing about him?
Yeah.
I often do stories that depart just slightly from our normal realm of, hiking and mountain climbing and kayaking. And the interesting thing here, this is a UFO group that has an outdoor component, because what you do and how this differs from what most people think of as SETI research, which is government sending signals into space and hoping to solicit an answer.
Take us on a little tour of the experience that you had. Now, I know it's detailed in your article, but just kind of give us a brief overview of what happened and what you observed.
Well, just quickly, this took place over a weekend. It started with a lecture on a Saturday night, and at that lecture, a couple of hundred people just heard the basics of what the organization is about. The next day, we got more of the same. It was a smaller group. If you came to the second day, you were at this point paying a little more because you were going to take part in the full workshop that involves a field trip on that Sunday night. And basically, what you're taught is a combination of mental and physical approaches to calling in an extraterrestrial piloted spacecraft. Dr. Greer is also a student of transcendental meditation, so he places a heavy emphasis on consciousness and the power of the mind. And what we were told during the day-long workshop was that using TM-type techniques and meditation, we could sort of send, and this is an oversimplification, and he would probably object to it, but this is the basics. You can send out to craft that are presumably there and let them know where you're going to be that night. And we literally had a 15-minute exercise where we told them, it's like, I compared it to the start of the old David Letterman show, when you start out at the sun and start coming closer to Earth. You're supposed to visualize things that will help guide them in. And we were literally thinking, we're near Lake Superior. Look at the finger of Lake Superior and follow that west. And then you get closer. And we went out we went out that night, a group of about 12 of us. The basic equipment, aside from the spiritual training we received, were big flashlights, the halogen models you can get at Sears that are 100,000 candle power, and they also play tones of noises that he said were recorded at crop circle sites, where in some cases where I think there had been UFO activity, in some cases not. It's a little ambiguous about that, but the implication is that crop circles are related to UFOs, and he had been on vigils at these places or had gotten recordings made at them at other times, and it's sort of metallic or crickety noises, and we were playing these. So basically, we were out there at night.
These are trilling sounds that they've taken allegedly at crop circle formations.
And
go ahead.
What we did was we arrived at this site. It was a state park in northwest of Minneapolis. Set up. The sun went down, and we started the drill of waving flashlights, meditating, playing the sounds, and then from then on, you're just waiting for something to happen.
Now, I understand that there was some noise that was heard or something that turned out to be, some natural thing?
It turned out we heard it. When we arrived, we heard a noise that it didn't sound exactly like one of the noises that he had played, but it sounded similar. It was kind of a metronomic, regular, and I assumed it was a tree frog or something. It turned out three of us later, actually went crashing through the woods. It was about a quarter of a mile away, and it was an owl. So there wasn't a UFO that night.
Now, as I recall, was it 48 Hours, did you say, that did the television thing on him?
Right, it was part of it. They focused on him and John Mack and the abduction phenomenon.
Right. As I recall, the 48 Hours piece was not really too favorable for what for the type of research that he's doing. And just from what you've described, it doesn't sound very scientifically based anyway.
No, I mean, this
sounds
is
sort of
my
new
opinion,
agey. Yeah.
But I don't think it is. I think what I say in the article, this is very much my opinion. I mean, you can't prove this one way or the other. But to me, Greer is a person who has a rational side, and he's not a crazy person or anything. And the fact that he works as a doctor makes it clear that he can function in a very rational way. But he has another side, and there's nothing wrong with that, but when you're presenting yourself as a scientist, certain things mixing in with it can detract from that. And his transcendental meditation interest, his belief he believes in remote viewing, which is somewhat controversial belief that some people can see things happening somewhere else simultaneously, and that comes into play. There's a strong message of a coming. He never uses the term millennium. At least I don't remember him doing so. But that message is there, and at the heart of what CSETI is about is that the aliens, when they do come, it is going to bring about a revolution in human consciousness.
Oh boy!
And that, and that is true. It would.
I'm sure it would, but I think what he's saying, it sounds similar to what a lot of the contactees are saying.
Right.
That the Space Brothers are here to save us, and they're going to, things are going to change when they come here, and I guess that's what concerns me a lot.
Well, it was my opinion that he shares a lot of similarities with contactees.
Okay.
I asked him that, and he does not agree. I mean, as I said, he considers himself a hard-headed, straightforward researcher.
Okay. We're going to go to a break. When we come back now, I want to talk about the money. We've been talking about that at the beginning of the program, so we're going to get into that. 1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. Give us a call. My guest is Alex Hurd. I'm Michael Corbin, and you're listening to the ParaNet UFO Continuum. We'll be right back.
ParaNet Information Services is your electronic window on the world of UFOs, accessible by computer and modem. ParaNet keeps you up to date on the world pulse of ufology, with sighting reports, interesting findings, and general discussion on the mysterious UFO enigma. ParaNet features one of the most comprehensive text file libraries in the world on the paranormal, available for a small online fee. So plug into power and knowledge through ParaNet. The BBS number is available 24 hours a day. Call the data line at area 303-429-2713. That's 303-429-2713. Or for more information, contact ParaNet Information Services at area 303-429-2654. That's 303-429-2654.
October 1987. A child is lost in a well. No country comes to the aid of a child the way we do. Yet today many children are lost. Lost in an education system unable to prepare them for a competitive world. Imagine if the effort that saved that child went into keeping the promise that every child gets the best education. Call 1-800-96-PROMISE for information on changing the schools in your community. A message from the Education Excellence Partnership and the Ad Council.
Well, I was a little nervous. First time I went into an elementary school classroom as a junior achievement volunteer. But when I saw how eager the kids were, I knew it was going to be all right. They're so thrilled you're there.
If you've ever wondered what you can do to help kids expand their horizons, find out about our new elementary school volunteer program. Call 1-800-THE-NEW-JA. That's 1-800-THE-NEW-JA. A public service message brought to you by Junior Achievement and the Ad Council.
You're listening to one of the most unusual programs you'll ever hear. It's the ParaNet UFO Continuum, and it deals with one of the most fascinating subjects around. Once again, here's your host, the Director of ParaNet Information Services, Michael Corbin.
1-800-836-2009, 1-800-UFO-2009. And we're back with the ParaNet UFO Continuum, and my guest, Alex Hurd, Senior Editor of Outside Magazine. And we're going to go to the phones. We have Brother John calling us from Santa Cruz, California, listening on KNRY down by the sea. Hello, John.
Yes, hi. How are you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Very good program again.
Thank you.
I wanted to just make a comment and then ask maybe a question. I've taken also the same workshop from Stephen Greer that their guest has.
Okay.
I didn't go out at night, though, looking for the UFOs, and the reason was, throughout his workshop, he left something out that I thought was very important, and that is the need for spiritual discernment.
Okay.
He was totally against the notion that there may be some UFOs that have let's say, a negative agenda, or that they're deceptive in some way.
Is that a little naive, or what?
That's the question. Is it his naivete, or is there something else there? And that is, as a matter of fact, there are certain requirements to be able to go out with him. And one of them is that you don't have a negative attitude, or that you don't even, or that you're not even open to the negative possibility.
Right.
Now, John, let me ask you this real quick. Now,
Yeah.
did you actually join the group?
No.
You were just you went through the workshop.
No, I just took the workshop that your guest did.
Okay, now let me ask you, did you have to fill out a real extensive questionnaire?
If I wanted to go out in the evening with them, there was this questionnaire, and that's what I'm saying. In other words, the questionnaire was to weed out, one of the ideas was to weed out anyone that was more or less open to the possibility that some of the UFOs might be negative, or have a malevolent intention. His notion is that you have to assume that they are all positive. You have to assume they're all positive.
I guess from where I sit, I guess that kind of contradicts the scientific inquiry, doesn't it?
It certainly does, and it also neglects a lot of the data that's out there too.
Okay, comments, Alex?
Well, he's right. He calls it the presumption of non-hostility, and you have to agree to abide by it. And during our workshop, people quit in the lecture and the workshop. People question that, and he just said that in one instance he said it's in the government's interest to promote the idea that aliens are hostile. But his major point is that our perceptions could be flawed, and he often uses the analogy of someone being pulled into an emergency room who's been in a car accident,
right,
and they're being worked over by mysterious creatures. They may not realize where they are. They may not realize they're being helped. And the analogy is that if you're abducted and receive those sort of classic horrible experiences like needles up to the orifices, that is probably for your own good. Now, where he gets that is unclear. But if you're a member, you don't know where he gets it other than just that he has intuited it, or it's just come to him. He says it's logical, but it's not really logical.
Now, what could that mean? I mean, one of you guys can answer this or comment on this, but what could that possibly mean for, say, an agenda? Could there possibly be an agenda involved in this other than what is stated?
Well, I believe that he believes that he's not just saying that to manipulate. I mean, obviously it is manipulating people to make them accept something just based on your decree. But I don't think he just thought it up and said, this is what I'm going to say. I believe he believes it, and that he believes aliens are inherently good, and that's just part of his message. That's part of the contactee message.
Isn't that part of what makes up perhaps a cult? The leader tells somebody that they're going to accept something no matter how irrational it might be?
Yeah, but I wouldn't go too far with that. He
Okay.
doesn't strike me as a cult leader or even a presumptive cult leader. He strikes me as someone with a large ego, and I think even people who support him will admit to that. And they say someone with a mission this important has to have a large ego.
Okay, let's go a little deeper now, Alex, into your investigation. You started investigating or penetrating the nucleus of the group, and I'm curious to know what you discovered about the finances of the organization.
Well, what I did was I just spent a lot of time on the phone talking to people who are in the group. Some are still satisfied with it. Some people have left but don't want to talk about it. And then there were some people, and two are quoted directly in the story, both of whom were former office secretaries or the office manager of the CSETI headquarters in Asheville. And what they said was backed up by people who didn't really want to go on the record. But the gist, it's all in the article, but the gist is just that they don't believe that the members are being served that well. And this is a non-profit group. People give money on their own free will, expecting to get a service that's promised.
According to your article, Burl Ives is one of the CSETI Executive Council members. It seems like they have maybe a pretty impressive roster of membership.
Well, they have attracted some celebrities, and we talk about some of the people who have either joined or given money, and another one is the famous philanthropist Lawrence Rockefeller, who his spokesman denies that he's a member. I was told that he is a member, but on a lot of these cases you can only carry it so far.
Now that's interesting. Lawrence Rockefeller, that name pops up in other areas as well of UFO research.
Right.
How much are you privy to how much Rockefeller contributed?
He gave the organization a total of $20,000, but that broke down. Part of the money was for Greer's personal use, actually. I talk about that in the article.
There's also another benefactor, Frederick Smith, an owner of a Fox Broadcasting affiliate in Baltimore, who contributed $16,000.
Right.
That's a lot of money.
Right. And I think I made an error. I haven't looked at this in a while. One of those two people gave him $5,000 for personal use. I can't remember if it was Smith or Rockefeller.
I think you mentioned it was Smith.
Right. Okay, there it is. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay.
Anyway, those aren't gargantuan amounts of money, but the people in the organization are often told that there is no money. And one of the people who spoke to me on the record, she alleges that, frankly, that he gets money and doesn't, keep very good books. I have no idea whether that's true, because that sort of thing doesn't show up in the tax records from the government that I requested. I don't know if you've ever done that, but...
You talking about like Freedom of Information Act, or are you talking about
any
non-profit organizations?
Any group that's non-profit, you can get what's called Form 990.
Right.
But those things are only as accurate as the people filling them out.
Sure.
So you can't always be sure.
Right. Okay, we're going to go to a break. When we come back, we'll talk a little bit more about the financial aspects and what it could possibly lead to. My guest is Alex Hurd, senior editor of Outside Magazine. 1-800-836-2009 is our number. Give us a call. My name is Michael Corbin. We'll be back in just a moment. Grab a pen and get ready to copy down a computer address. It's an email address where you can reach the ParaNet Information Services BBS through America Online. With America Online's Internet Gateway, you can send us mail and we can respond to you personally through your America Online screen name. With America Online's Usenet Newsgroup tie-in, you can also access the 7 ParaNet newsgroups dealing with UFOs, metaphysics, paranormal activity, and others. Learn about our upcoming shows and pose questions in advance. And if your question is selected, you'll get a free cassette copy of the show. You'll also find summaries of past shows. If you're not already a customer of America Online, call 1-800-827-6364 for more information. Now, here's that email address to reach us. It's paranet@aol.com or paranet@paranet.org. America Online and ParaNet, a winning combination.
Pilots, when you fly, you need convenient, accurate information for safe flight and landing operations, as well as local businesses that provide you with the services and treatment you deserve. The Skyway Publications Airport Directory and Entertainment Guides are what you need. These are free pocket-sized guides giving you information about large and small airports all over the country. Information like radio frequencies, runway systems, coordinates, and taxiways, as well as fuel and aircraft services provided at the airport, and local businesses catering to private pilots. It's yours free. Ask the fixed base operator at your favorite stops to carry the Skyway Airport Directory and Entertainment Guides, or call area 303-669-1800. Skyway Publications, your ticket to safer, cheaper, and more convenient flight. Talk to the FBO at your favorite destinations or call Skyway Publications at area 303-669-1800.
This is the ParaNet UFO Continuum, a weekly program dedicated to the mysterious and fascinating world of UFOs. If you're interested in learning more about ParaNet, the world's foremost communications network dealing with the UFO phenomena, call us at area 303-429-2654 or write to Box 172, Wheat Ridge, Colorado, 80034. Once again, here's your host, Michael Corbin.
And my guest is Alex Hurd, senior editor of Outside Magazine. And by the way, Alex, you're publishing a book, or you're working on a book now?
I'm working on a book about millennial subcultures and groups in the United States. Everything from utopian visionaries to people who think the world's going to come to an end because of environmental collapse.
I bet you're seeing quite a bit of this stuff.
Yeah, and it's interesting.
Yeah, I have to agree. It is very interesting, and it's quite fascinating that some of this stuff kind of floats into the UFO phenomena quite a bit. In under a minute or so, sum up for us now what it is that you came away with this experience, and what you feel is going on, or whatever. What
Greer's goals are?
Yeah.
This is in the article again, but he wants to prepare for the great contact. This is when a CSETI member shakes hands with an alien or a group, and his big agenda right now is trying to contact important people. He has a document called Project Starlight Overview, which lays out all the big shots in the world who need to be contacted now, so that they know who's running this show when the time comes. And at the center of it, of course, is Greer himself.
It's interesting. Okay, well, listen, thank you very much for being on the program. And by the way, the magazine is available on newsstands all across the country. It's Outside Magazine. It's the September 1994 edition, and it's quite a read. And I think Alex did a really good job on it, and very thorough, and it's very well documented. So thank you very much, Alex. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good night.
Bye.
Okay, next week, as we mentioned earlier, we're going to take a tour of the mysterious San Luis Valley with Christopher O'Brien. Chris has been somebody that has updated us quite frequently on things that are going on down there. And as we mentioned before, the San Luis Valley contains every aspect of the UFO phenomena that there is, including Bigfoot, mysterious cattle deaths, and he even mentioned something tonight about an event that happened in, I think it was Monte Vista, Colorado, which is down in that area, that involved NORAD, and we're going to talk about that. Also, real quick before we go off, I clipped an article out of the Rocky Mountain News last Monday, August 22nd, about citizen militia groups and how they view the Brady gun law. And everybody might say, well, what's that got to do with UFOs? Well, it seems that among the what I call the radical right, the citizens groups that are advocating conspiracies to take over the world, Something that's found in these reports consistently is unmarked black helicopters appearing in many locations, often threatening local residents by shining laser lights into their eyes. And I thought that was pretty interesting because, the black helicopter thing is quite prevalent in the UFO thing. So anyway, we'll get with you next week and go to the San Luis Valley. And until next week, this is Michael Corbin telling you to keep your eyes on the skies. Good night.